U.S. Senate moves to roll back Trump tariffs. Expanded coverage, context and proof. The U.S. Senate on October 28, 2025 narrowly approved a bipartisan resolution to rescind President Donald Trump's emergency-style tariffs on Brazilian imports, passing the measure 52-48 and sending it to the House of Representatives, where Republican leaders are expected to shelve or block the bill. What happened in the Senate? The resolution passed 52-48. 5 Senate Republicans joined unanimous Senate Democrats in supporting the measure. Among Republicans named in coverage were Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell, Tom Tillis and Rand Paul. Paul was a co-sponsor. Senate sponsors framed the vote as a check on the president's use of emergency powers to impose sweeping trade levies and warned the tariffs raised costs for U.S. consumers and companies that rely on Brazilian inputs. What the tariffs target and why they mattered. The tariffs, announced earlier in 2025 as part of a broader reciprocal and emergency tariff campaign, hit a wide range of goods. Key Brazilian exports to the U.S., coffee and beef in particular, were left subject to the higher levies, while certain sectors, for example aircraft, pulp, energy or other items, received exemptions in administration proclamations. Analysts and Brazilian officials said the measures covered a significant share of Brazil-U.S. trade and could raise costs for American consumers and U.S. companies that use those imports. Why the House is likely to block it. Reuters and other outlets reported that, despite the Senate majority, the Republican-controlled House is expected to block or shelve the Brazil repeal, making legislative success uncertain unless the House leadership changes course. A presidential veto is also widely expected if the measure reached the White House. Legal and institutional backdrop. Courts, Congress and the White House. The tariffs were issued under broad executive emergency authority. The administration relied on statutes including IEEPA and other authorities, a use of power that has already been the subject of litigation. Lower federal courts, and the U.S. Court of International Trade, have at times found that parts of the administration's tariff program exceeded presidential authority, and the Supreme Court agreed to hear key related cases this year, raising the possibility that the judiciary could curb or clarify the president's power to impose such tariffs. The White House had in February 2025 publicly announced reinstatements and expansions of Section 232 and other tariff measures as part of its trade agenda. Those administrative actions are part of the legal and political fight over when and how tariffs may be used. Broader implications. If the Senate repeal were to become law, it would relieve immediate tariff pressure on U.S. importers and some consumers that rely on Brazilian goods, and would ease a diplomatic strain between Washington and Brasilia. Conversely, if the House blocks the repeal and courts ultimately uphold the president's emergency authority, the tariffs would remain in place, potentially keeping prices higher for affected commodities, coffee, beef, certain foodstuffs and other Brazilian exports, and preserving a tool the White House can use in negotiations. Reuters and trade analysts have warned of supply chain and price effects for certain commodities. What's next? Senators indicated additional floor actions on separate measures aimed at canceling tariffs on Canada and other countries are expected later in the week, part of a series of votes testing GOP unity and congressional appetite for reining in emergency tariff powers. Whether any of those measures can clear the House remains an open question.